Yeah. Aristotle endeavored to establish the unity of laws in the sense of a protest against superstitions, against naive magic, against naive miracles, and so on. In order to understand the principle of Aristotle, time, place, action, and all that, it is necessary to realize, I know that because I fucking was on stage, Aristotelian principles in theatre. Anyway, let's not digress. In order to understand the principle of Aristotle, it is necessary to realize that he had still to prove that if, in general, dogs cannot speak in human language, then one particular dog, say, in the island of Crete, also cannot speak. Or that if, in general, trees cannot move of themselves, then one particular tree also cannot move, and so on. All this, of course, has been forgotten long ago, and from the principle of Aristotle there follows now the idea of the permanency of all physical concepts, such as motion, velocity, force, energy, etc. This means that what has once been regarded as motion always remains motion. What has once been regarded as velocity always remains velocity, becoming infinite velocity. In its primary meaning, the principle of Aristotle is comprehensible and necessary, and is nothing else than the law of the general consecutiveness of phenomena which belongs to logic. But in its modern meaning, the principle of Aristotle is entirely wrong. So says Ouspensky. Even for new physics, the concept of infinite velocity, which is exclusively based on the principle of Aristotle, has become impossible. And the principle, new physics, yeah? And the principle of Aristotle must be completely abandoned before the planning of a new model of the universe becomes possible. I shall return to this question later. In speaking of physics, it is first of all necessary to analyze the very definition of the subject. According to the definition of textbooks of this science, physics studies matter in space and phenomena in this matter. And here we are at once faced with the fact that physics operates with undefined and unknown quantities, which, for the sake of convenience, or owing to the difficulty of definition, are taken as known quantities, and even as quantities requiring no definition. There are formally distinguished in physics, first, quantities requiring definition, and second, primary quantities, the idea of which is considered to be inherent in all people. Professor Schwalson, in his textbook, enumerates as primary quantities extensions, yes? Linear extensions, area extensions, and volume extensions, that is, the length of a straight line, the area of a portion of surface, and the volume of a portion of space limited by surfaces. Extension being the measure of size and distance. Time, velocity of uniform rectilinear motion. These are naturally only examples, and Professor Schwalson does not, I think that's how you pronounce it, does not insist on the completeness of the list. I've read this book loads of times, but I still don't know to pronounce their fucking names. Does not insist on the completeness of the list. In reality, the list is very long. It includes space, infinity, matter, motion, mass, and so on. In a word, practically all the concepts with which physics operates refer to undefined and undefinable quantities. Did you get that? Let me repeat that again. In reality, the list is very long. It includes space, infinity, matter, motion, mass, and so on. In other words, practically all the concepts with which physics operates refers to undefined and undefinable quantities. Of course, in a great many cases, it is impossible to avoid operating with unknown quantities. But it has become the traditional scientific method not to recognize anything as unknown, like singularities, and to regard the quantities which elude definition as primary, like before the Big Bang, there was quantum fun, or it's just pure chaos, or nothing existed before the Big Bang, or zero-point energy, It's a primary state, like the Higgs boson particle, and out of this, then, comes everything else. Well, what was it? Anyway, back to this. The idea of which, blah, 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 and to regard the quantities which elude definition as primary, the idea of which is inherent in everyone. The natural result has been that the whole of the vast edifice, erected with tremendous labour, has become artificial and unreal.